Welcome to Q&A, Social Security Disability Today. This program is brought to you by the Reeves Law Firm, representing you and your Social Security and disability needs. If you have a problem or questions regarding Social Security and disability, call attorney Anthony Reeves. Here's your host, attorney Anthony Reeves.
Working. Why does Social Security need to know if I'm still working? Okay, let's start with the very first premise. I talked about this before, but let me break it down to you again. There are 5 steps to the Social Security disability process. The very first step is, are you performing substantially gainful activity? That's a nice technical way of them asking, are you still working? And they would ask that question, why? Because if you're still working, you're presumed to not be disabled. I always tell people the very nature of disability benefits is to award you benefits based on the fact that you're saying you can't work. Telling me that you're at work and you're struggling does nothing if you're still working. So what they're looking at it is as substantial as a gainful. So they're going to be looking at it from the standpoint of how much money you're making. That's usually the first threshold. So let's say you're making about $1,000, $2,000 a month. So the first thing they want to know is, if you are working, why should they not basically deny your claim based on the fact that you're earning substantial gainful activity? The responsibility then shifts to you to demonstrate to Social Security that the conditions that you have in terms of how you're working are much different than a normal workplace as it's performed in the national economy. You're like, well, okay, Attorney Reeves, you said a whole lot of noise. I don't understand. Okay, let's say you're still working. But let's say you're working for your cousin's mom and pop shop, and your cousin is basically paying you for 40 hours worth of work, but you're only working 10 hours a day. 10 hours a week. You can make the argument that that's considered sheltered work because in the grander scheme of things, even though you're working, you're making money, but you're not really working in a normal circumstance because they know your medical conditions, they know you need money, they know you need insurance, so they're just paying you to basically work a couple hours. Because the reality is that let's say none of those things are in case. Let's say that they determine that you're not in a sheltered work environment. Your supervisors don't know that you're disabled. No one's helping you with your job. You're just struggling a little bit because it's getting tougher and tougher. That's not Social Security is not going to be thinking about it like that. They want to know, are you working? Because if you're working and you're making a certain amount of money, automatically you're done unless you can demonstrate that you're working such a different level, different than a normal worker in that condition will be working in order for you to survive. That's why I said sheltered work. That's why I used the cousin example, because in the cousin example, you could say, my cousin knows that I'm a medical condition. The job is required for 40 hours a week. Everybody knows that I'm hurting and so forth. So they did this in order to help me supplement myself so that I wouldn't basically be living on the streets. That's a different scenario than someone who is at work 40 hours of work. They get to work every day. They do their normal breaks. They're performing at a regular level, but they're just struggling. It's not about struggling, people. Social Security doesn't pay you. There's no struggling standard for disability. You don't get disability benefits because you're struggling at work. You get disability benefits because your condition prevents you from working and performing work as it's normally performed in the national economy. Now, somebody's going to sit here and say, you said it nationally as it's normally performed, but the reality is this. If you're still performing the work, even if you're struggling, you're still performing the work. The question is, are there enough things going on at your work? Let's say your coworkers are doing all your work for you. Let's say your supervisor lets you go home early every day and come to work late every morning. That's not normal. But if you say that's what's happening, you got to be prepared to prove it. Because if not, Social Security is more likely to deny you at the first step of the process because of the fact that you're working.